Hello everyone, my name is Michael Kresetek, and today I'll be showing you my user stories that I did for my Milestone project. So, the user story for my very first one is, as the player, I want to control an engaging character so I can traverse the world through their perspective and achieve their goal. One completion criteria is create a possessable character that will mainly represent the player. So as you can see with the base third person avatar is the main character that the player will be controlling. The next criteria is the player will be able to move the character horizontally and vertically on the ground. While pressing A and D, we'll be able to move the character to the left and to the right, and the WS will make it go forward and backwards. The next completion criteria is the player will be able to move the camera around to change the player's perspective inside the level. So just rotating the mouse to the left and to the right, moving it, will change how the player sees the world inside the level. The next completion criteria is the player will be able to jump once on the ground, resets after the avatar hits the ground again. So once the player jumps up, he'll land, he'll be able to jump again and move around. The next completion criteria is sound effects for when the player is jumping and running. So as you can hear the footsteps for every time that the player is moving, and when you jump you'll also hear the sound that it plays. The next completion criteria is particle effects for when the player is running and landing their jump. So as you can see while walking, the smoke trail, the cloud trail will be following the player, and at the end of the jump you'll see it jump or form around where he lands. For my next user story, as the avatar, I want to collect the moon so I can progress to the next part of the level. One of the completion criteria for the moon is that the moon will have a glow around it indicating to the players that the moon can't be picked up. So once we go to the moon, we can see that it's got a glow going on that the players could see for them to pick up. The next completion criteria is that the moon will be rotating in place at the designated area. Now as you can see, this is where the moon will be for the player to pick up, and it is also rotating for the players. The next completion criteria is after the player collects the moon will disappear from the level. So with the exact same moon that we have in front of us, as we go and pick it up, it will disappear from the level and the player won't be able to pick it up again. The next completion criteria is when the player collects the moon, and if the player is damaged, the player will restore their missing health to full. So now let's go to the next moon within the level and let's get hit from one of the plant monsters. So now that we got hit, we could go to this moon, go pick it up, and it will get us to full. The next completion criteria is when the player collects a certain amount of moon from a level, the player will be able to progress to the next part of the level. So now, for that to happen, we have to collect the last moon. And with it, we'll pick it up and have 3 out of 3 moons. And we'll go to the end door. And then press an E, the door will open to go to the end. My next user story is as a player, I want to have a visual of all my collectibles and health so that I can keep track of all my progression and see what direction I am going. One completion criteria is that when the player is playing the game, you will see all of their coins, health, moons, and a compass displayed to them. So in the very beginning, we can see on the top left corner we have our coin counter, our moons, and to the top right we have the player's health bar and the compass for the player. The next completion criteria is when the player picks up a coin, the coin display will go up. So now let's head off to the first coin that we see. We'll go pick it up. We'll get 1 coin. We'll go to the next one. We'll get 2 coins. The next completion criteria is when the player picks up the moon display will go up. Now let's head to this first moon over here. We'll pick it up. Now we have 1 out of 3 moons. And then we could go over here as well and pick up this moon, and we'll get 2 out of 3. The next completion criteria is when the player gets hit, the health display will go down. So for this, we'll be needing the enemy to fire a projectile at us. And with the health bar, you'll see 1 tick go down, the second one will go 2/3. Okay, and the last completion criteria is that the compass pointer is pointing the direction that the player is facing. So if the player is facing straight ahead, they'll go north. If they look to the left, the compass pointer will face left. If they look down, it's going to be south, and to the right will be east, even while they're moving in all 8 directions. Okay, those are all the user stories that were done on my behalf, and now I would like to introduce to you Chen.
Hello everyone, my name is Chen Yangshu from Team 10 o'clock Raven. Today I'm going to demonstrate the issues I've worked on in this spring. The first issue is Cappy attack. As avatar, I want to be able to attack and destroy the enemy avatar so that I can pass through and progress through the level. Completion criteria. Players can throw out the projectile by clicking the left mouse button once. The projectile will fly out in player facing direction. After throwing the projectile will track player's location and fly back to the player at the same speed as throwing out. After the projectile collides with the enemy avatar, kills the enemy avatar. The projectile disappears after fly back to the avatar. The projectile can only be fired again after the previous fired one disappears. The projectile has a spinning effect. The next issue, Cappy control. As avatar, I want to take control of the enemy so that I can gain their ability to pass through the obstacle. Completion criteria. Player can throw out a control projectile by clicking the right mouse button once. The projectile will fly out in player facing direction. After throwing a projectile, the projectile will track the player's location and fly back to the player at the same speed as throwing out. The projectile disappears after flying back to the avatar. The projectile can only be fired again after it disappears. After the projectile collides with the enemy avatar, the player avatar disappears. A player controls the hit enemy. The new player avatar now has the same movement and abilities as the enemy avatar. When the player is possessing the enemy, player can press a key to exit the possession form. That's all the issue I have worked on. Thanks for watching and welcome the next presenter.
Hello, everyone. My name is Francisco from the group 10 o'clock Ravens, and today I am here to showcase and demonstrate the issues that I worked on during this sprint for our game, Ultra Boy Odyssey. So the very first item that I worked on, or issue, is issue KR10-13, which is titled The Shooting Enemy Avatar. And the user story reads as follows. As the enemy, I want to shoot at the player so I can prevent them from progressing through the level. Very well. So as we can see, we have some enemies already set out over here in front of us. We're going to come and demonstrate some of the completion criteria with this one over here on the right. So the very first item on the completion criteria reads as follows. The enemy avatar moves about the level. As we can see, this enemy avatar is capable of traversing the level thanks to a behavior tree and some predetermined path points that have been set for it. So every time this enemy references that behavior tree using an AI controller, and it'll move about those predetermined points that it has already been set up beforehand. So that is that first item on our completion criteria that can be successfully checked off. The next item is that the enemy avatar shoots at the player on sight within range. To demonstrate this, I'm going to be needing this enemy avatar for the next part. So I have already set up these other ones over here. And now the next item on the criteria says the enemy avatar shoots at the player on sight within range. So for right now, that sight range is about 500 Unreal units, which isn't too much, but that is subject to change and tweaks during some balancing. But for now, it is set at 500 units. Whenever we get within that 500 units of sight range for the from the enemy, it'll begin to open fire at us. That is also using that behavior tree that I mentioned earlier for the movement. Using that same behavior tree and AI controller, the enemy senses the player and then begins to open fire. Okay, so that's the next item on our completion criteria that can be successfully checked off. For the next item, it says that the shooting will have audible feedback. So as you probably heard it earlier, every time that this enemy begins to open fire, it plays a sound. So that way the player has clear indication that they are currently under attack and that the enemy is opening fire at them. So that way there is no confusion. They know that that sound is coming from the enemy avatar shooting at them. So that is the next item on that completion criteria that can successfully be checked off. The next thing is going to be that the enemy can be destroyed by the player attack. So, as we can see, we're going to sneak up over here on this enemy. We're going to attack it. And when its collision box hits the enemy attack, or since that has been hit by the enemy attack, it will die. So we have some more over here. So let's quickly demonstrate that. It dies. And boom, it dies. So the enemies are capable of being destroyed by the player attack. So that is that last item on that completion criteria that can be checked off. And this whole issue or story can be successfully moved into the done. Next on the next item that I worked on during this sprint is KR 10-15, which is titled The Destructible Door. For this user's story, it reads as follows. As an object, I want to block the player's path until I am destroyed by the player to reveal the rest of the level. So, we already have our nice door set up over here on this part of the level. And for our very first item on our completion criteria is going to be that the wall successfully blocks the player's progression. So this wall was made using destructible mesh, but it successfully is able to block us from progressing to the next part of the level. We cannot run into it, and it won't crumble down that way. We can attack it, and it will not fall. We can try to jump over it, but we won't be successful at getting over that wall. So the first item on the completion criteria can be checked off as it blocks the player's progression from the rest of the level. So that's that item done. The next item on the completion criteria is that the wall has indication that it can be destroyed. When I built this destructible mesh, I made sure to implement a decal on it, which is this crack that you see here. So when you look at it and you compare it to the other walls on the level, you can see that this particular wall indicates to the player with those cracks that it can be destroyed. So that is a hint to the player that, hey, maybe there is something that the player can do in order to bring this wall down and reveal the next part of the level. So that part, that item on the completion criteria can now be successfully marked as done for that too. And the last item that we have on our completion criteria is that the wall crumbles down when shot by one hit of the projectile as the enemy avatar. So, as we know, our game is based loosely on Mario Odyssey, so when we control the enemy avatar, only then can we destroy this wall using that projectile. So, like I said, the wall crumbles down when shot by one hit of the projectile as the enemy avatar. So now that we're the enemy avatar, go ahead and shoot our projectile at it, and the wall successfully comes crumbling down. So now the player is able to progress through the next part of the level, but that completion criteria is successfully marked off as we can destroy it. And with that being the last item on the completion criteria, this destructible door issue or story can be marked as complete. So now we can move on. And anyway, that's the end of my showcase. Thank you very much for watching, and I will now pass it on over to my next teammate. Thank you.
My name is Nathaniel Olivetti. First issue that I had was the metric level. The user story is, as a level, I want to have a dedicated space to show any mechanic or feature for the game. Some of the completion criteria is create an area to test the jumping mechanics and wall slide, and that is over here. You can test all the features of the jumps, the wall slides, for any of the surfaces. The next completion criteria was to create an area to test and show Cappy attack and Cappy capture, which this area is over here among the other ones. You can show the distance of capturing and both hitting without the repercussions. And the final criteria was to have an area for the AI movement and the ability to track a player and attack. That is over here. You have it to where it tracks the player, follows him, and as well as over here, where the enemy has its own route. And will also track the player as well. That is it for the criteria for the metric level. My next issue that I had was the projectile. As the user story is, as a projectile, I want to be fired to destroy other avatars and objects. For me, the projectile is linked to the enemy. First completion criteria is on input. The projectile shoots in the direction the player is facing, and that is the mouse click. The next completion criteria is sound effects for when the projectile is being launched. That is still. Projectile is being launched. There's a little pluck sound. Next criteria is the particle effect when the projectile hits the object or avatar. As it hits the ground, see a little cloud there. And the final criteria is projectile disappears when it hits an object or an avatar. It'll disappear. It is a rolling ball, so it will bounce and disappear. My final user story, or my final issue that I had, was the unlockable door. The user story is, as an object, I want to be opened when a required number of moons have been collected, so that the player can move to the next area. The first completion criteria was a physical door that blocks the player without the required numbers of moons. Here's the door. I cannot open the door until I have 3 moons. The second completion criteria. The door will open, allowing player to move past when a set number of moons have been collected by the player. For this one, there's 3 moons needed. I have now all 3 moons. And the door will open. That is it.
Hello, my name is Jackson Plumstead, and I will be showcasing what I worked on with Team 10 O'Clock Ravens for this week's milestone. The first thing that I worked on, and that is presently on the screen right now, is the menu. And the user story for that is, as the player, I want to navigate a menu that allows me to start the game, quit the game, and change the game volume of the sound. Completion criteria. The player can quit when the option is available on screen. Before the game starts, there is a click to start play button that will start the game. The game will be able to be exited by means of a quit button. Buttons will change color when the player hovers over it with the cursor. Have a options menu to change the volume of the sound. And when the player gets to a pipe at the end of the level and jump on top of it, a win menu will appear. And so when I start the game and I start poking around, you see that it changes colors. There's a start button, and when I click on that, the game will start. I'm going to hold off on that for a second. The options menu, which when you go to the options menu, you can change the volume of the game. So I'm going to crank it a little bit up. So when I start the game, it'll be a little bit loud. And there's a back button. There's the credits. And there's a quit button. So I'm not going to click this quit button because it'll close out the game for right now, and I still have other things to show. So I'm going to start the game. And I'm going to show you the win screen first. So let me run over here and grab these moons. Come on. There we go. No! I messed that one up. So I'm gonna sniper shoot this thing. Let's see. Alright. Now grab it. One. Let's go. And boom. Got all 3 moons. Run over here, press E on the door, and jump up, and you got the win menu. And that can send you to main menu, play again, or quit. And the next thing on my list is that is the health pool. The health pool user story is, as a player, I will have a health pool system to be damaged and die in game so that I can change my gameplay strategy accordingly. Completion criteria. When health pool goes down 1 point when hit with a projectile. Health pool is a max of 3 hits. The player dies when the health pool is depleted. When health is depleted, a game over screen pops up on the screen to give you the options of to retry, quit, or go back to the main menu. So I'm going to show that now. I'm going to run over here. Get smacked up by this little plant creature. Come here. That's 1 hit. And you see the health bar in the top right corner goes down. That's 2 hits. And that's 3 hits. And there is the retry, the main menu, and the quit. I'm going to do main menu first. And I'm going to start again. Run over here. Get smacked up again. One, 2, 3. Alright. And then I'm going to do main menu. Because quit will drop me out of the game. I'll show that last. Alright. And the next thing I'm going to be talking about are the coins. The user story for the coins is, as the coin, I want to be picked up by the player and raise their score. Completion criteria. When the player touches with the coin, it disappears and their coin counter goes up by 1. The coin spins in place and has a gold glow and sound feedback when picked up. So, you run over here, jump over here, you got a coin. You got 2 coins right there in the top left. 3 coins. And 4 coins because I like even numbers. There we go. And you heard the sound feedback. It was glowing gold, and it spins, and it also makes the counter go up. And the next and last criteria that I have here is the heart pickup. As the avatar, I want to pick up the heart so that I can regenerate health. The heart will disappear when the avatar collides with it. When the avatar is not at full health after collecting the health is recovering by 1. When the avatar is at full health after collecting the health stays the same. Sound feedback when collecting it. So I'll run back here, and I'll get hit twice, and show you the... Alright, running away. The heart pickup. So this is the heart pickup. When I go to pick it up, it heals me by 1. It heals me by 1. Now I just realized I have to die in order to show you the way it doesn't let you pick it up when you have full health. So you run over here, and when you touch it and you have full health, it does not go up. And there's no sound feedback. Let's go to escape, and let's go to quit, and boom. No more game. Now if I go back and open it up and then let's see if it's recording. It is. Alright. And so I click on the quit button and boom, quits the game. And I believe that is my last completion criteria, and that is my last issue. So I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and have a great day. Thank you so much.